Great to be here. Thank you, Olga. And as Olga mentioned, I'm consulting editor at MoneyControl, which is part of the CNBC Network 18 group in India. I cover crypto and I work in this space as well. And we have some solid guests here today. We've got Frank and we've got Matthew. And I want to start off with letting you guys introduce yourself and the projects you represent.
So I'm Frank Fitzgerald. I was up here earlier. Pax.world, I think you guys know it's an open version, metaverse. Myself, though, a little background, spent years in quantitative finance, so I thought that was interesting what he was saying about that space. I don't even think there's enough data in equities for quantitative finance yet. But yeah, left in 2017, went to Zurich, never looked back, and built the metaverse.
I'm Matthew van Niekerk, one of the co-founders of a company called Settlemint. My background is about 14 years in financial services. Back in 2014, got into blockchain tech, set up an innovation center at the bank to figure out how we were going to keep a seat at the table. Tried to figure that out, but figured out that there's a lot of repeated predictable challenges in the blockchain space. And if every implementations face the same set of challenges, you can build software to solve for that. So number one, back in 2016, I was pretty active in the space already then. Number two, I believe that the technology is going to have foundational and fundamental benefits for society. And the third thing then, why Settlemint is, if you believe those first two things, then the best thing you can do is make it easy for everybody to build game-changing applications on top.
Can you guys hear us, by the way? Yeah, great. Because I couldn't hear you. Yeah, but let me start off by addressing the elephant in the room, which is decentralization. I know there's a lot of talk around this. I mean, when you say Web 3.0, you think decentralization. My question is, do people even care about decentralization for the most part? I know there's a lot of talk around this, but apart from geopolitical events like we're witnessing now, where you want custody of your own money, outside of that, do most people even care about this?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think there's do most people or do people is actually a better way to phrase that question.
There's a small percentage of people who are into crypto today.
And I think that's growing, right?
That's growing, yes.
Yeah, I think as people really begin to get educated and understand what decentralization is, I think you have a group of people way on one side of the fence, which is like, everything needs to be decentralized. You can't so much as put a URL in anything, and there's no way that you can put this on a centralized server. And then you have these sort of, let's call it realists that are like, yes, we want to be decentralized as much as we possibly can. We know that there are limitations at this point in time. And then you have people that just don't even understand what decentralization is at all, nor do they care. And they're looking at it more from an investment perspective. So, as that's growing more, I think people are shifting further towards that decentralized purist that, hey, wait, that actually could be a great thing. And it depends on what type of utility you're talking about as well. So whether that's, DAO decentralization, whether that's, from a voting rights perspective and how that actually works on a legal side, or whether that's how we're talking about from an infrastructure perspective. So it's...
Right, I guess what I'm trying to say is that we can, all agree that NFTs at this point are the gateway to Web 3.0. That's one way for a lot of normies to get into this space. And a lot of them are buying their NFTs on OpenSea, they're buying their crypto on centralized exchanges. So with these guys coming in, I'm like, do they even care about decentralization? Do they even know what it is? And Matthew, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, but I think you have to look at, people care about things when they're hurt by the opposite of it. So if you look at, a number of cases around the world, but when you have centralized powers and or centrally organized systems, and my data gets leaked, and now some very influential companies in the blockchain space that don't know how to store their data securely, now my name is on a list that's floating as owner of a ledger, Ledger Nano X. So I'm like, wait a minute. This is a company in the industry that has a centralized part of their organization, and it really messes with people's lives. So I think that when you feel the pain, you see the benefit. And this is just one example of hundreds that happen every day.
And how decentralized is Web 3.0 currently, especially recently, just last week, or was it 2 weeks ago, we heard about MetaMask restricting their services in certain countries like Venezuela, but perhaps it wasn't a whole lot to do with MetaMask as it was to do with Infura, the data provider. Maybe you can throw some light on that.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at this in so many different ways. You can even take it outside of the blockchain, right? So you can even talk about like what Elon Musk did the other day, where he's maybe in a different way decentralizing the internet, right? Where he was asked to restrict Russia from the media servers or media that's coming out of Russia, and he said, no, someone's going to have to stick a gun to my head to actually allow me, or to make me stop that because I'm a free speech purist, right? And that's just outside of the blockchain. But, it's sort of a similar mentality is, do these people want to get restricted in other areas, for MetaMask and for, not to be able to run in the United States or run in this country or the other if they're running inside Venezuela? And do they need to have that headache? And they are for-profit companies, let's be real, right? And so if you're dealing with any technology that's not completely removed from profit, and it is truly a decentralized organization, then, and with decentralized technology, and they're not going for the profit, then you can actually get to that point.
Yeah, just maybe back to the like with Infura, like how are they able to do that? Like how are they able to restrict service? If you look at the ethos of the industry and setting up decentralized services and applications, they offer a centralized node hosting as a service. That's what they do. So when you're deploying or when you're using their service, you're just relying on what they're doing with AWS and where they're storing the set of nodes that they offer access to. An alternative to that is to work with other technology vendors that allow you to deploy your own node, and damn it, you can't censor me then. So I think if you look at what a lot of players, and Infura is just one example, but there are a lot of players in the space that are offering centralized versions for ease of access, which has its downfalls, and then they can censor and they can do all kinds of stuff that the technology was designed to prevent.
Right. I missed a little bit of your part there, but like, how many people have a MetaMask wallet here? Okay, so does everyone know what MetaMask is? Or the people who don't know what it is? Yeah. No, also like for MetaMask, I know you've got the Brave browser, but you need like a Chrome plugin as well. And that's what I'm guessing a lot of people use. So one wonders how, decentralized MetaMask is in the first place here as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I think of decentralized technology, and again, this goes back to we're still in the infancy of all this stuff, right? Because someone's still behind MetaMask, right? And there's an organization behind MetaMask that has lots of developers and lots of people that are actually executing on their stuff. And I hope I'm not burning any bridges with people from MetaMask, because love you. But at the end of the day, because there's someone behind it, it's not fully decentralized, right? So you can put code out into the system in the blockchain that actually will run itself and go through. And that's when I think of decentralized technology, that's how I think about it, right? MetaMask is a product that enables people to be inside or utilize wallet systems inside decentralized technology. So it's hard when you talk about it like that. But the other point I want to bring up is like when you think about even blockchain, Bitcoin and ETH, with what happened when Kazakhstan's power went out, right, last month. 1/3 of the entire mining operation went out. How decentralized is that, right? So, yeah. Sorry to bring up a totally different question, but
No, I totally get it. Moving on to the metaverse, Matt, I know your platform Settlemint is sort of like a plug-and-play platform infrastructure to build dApps. And Frank, you are building your own metaverse. Do we need an entirely new chain for the metaverse? I know in theory, let's say if I mint an NFT, and sell it to you, and you were to sell it on perhaps a centralized platform like OpenSea, and let's say there's royalty baked into it, but how do I know that once it's sold on OpenSea, I'm getting the royalties for it?
I love that.
I think we're probably going to disagree on this one, but I think
Totally.
in my view, at least, like what we're doing at Settlemint, I mean, there's less than 1% of developers have any experience with blockchain technology. Our platform is for the other 99%, and there's 10,000 different blockchains out there. A lot of them have different attributes, different consensus mechanisms. Things are good at, things are not good at. But there's 10,000 of them out there. How can we convince ourselves that you need a separate one, a new one, specific to NFTs? Of course, you can build a better wheel, but do we have to?
Yes. Here's why. You mentioned reselling and remuneration of value on a secondary sale for a royalty. In the blockchain, that doesn't exist. It is purely, even though it's in the ERC 1155 contract, right? It's purely something for a marketplace to look at in order to allow you to have that royalty, but it's still up to the underlying marketplace. So, and you have to negotiate it at whether or not they actually use it or not.
So they can just overwrite the smart contract?
And you could even do a private exchange of it, and you would never see that royalty again, right? So and doing that research and looking into it, like diving into the code to figure this out, right? You're like, oh wow, if I have that NFT, I can sell it for 20% less on another exchange or another marketplace. And even though there are other standards coming up with the NFTs to try and make that a standardized information that people can read, it's still not enforced. But I want to hit one other point, because I don't think that has anything to do with needing another chain, because the other chain is not something that we need today. But there will be a time period and the standards with where we may have new technology that we're going to need another chain for. And I can already think of like 5 or 6 examples that I would love to do that with, whether it's teleportation in the metaverse, interoperability, the way we take 3D models and putting information inside the system so we can use it across metaverses. So, yeah.
Yeah, what I was going to say, I think it's like we were talking about, service providers that are in the space that are doing things in a centralized way. Well, how is it that my royalty stream is being eliminated from the process when things are being exchanged? That's probably because of the exchange. That's overriding certain functionalities that are meant to take place, because when it's in the code, it's in the code. If the royalty stream is there with a wallet attached to it, if money's going into the smart contract, it should be executing as designed. If there was a flaw in the design, that's bad programming at the smart contract level. If it's being censored by a centralized marketplace, well, that's something different, and that's these people, let's get rid of them.
Yeah.
Interesting, yeah. There's just a lot of echo, so unfortunately I'm not able to hear some of your answers, so my bad.
It killed me on my speech earlier.
As long as they can hear us, right? But I'd love to chat more on that, but I want to move on to blockchain standards. Different regions are now having their own standards, with China having BSN, which is your blockchain-based service network, and Europe's EBSI, which is European Blockchain Services Infrastructure, where I think every EU country runs its own node. How interoperable will these be in the future, and is that even necessary?
Yeah, I think, I was talking to somebody who's involved with the blockchain service network in China, and they were saying, well, we're just going to roll our network out throughout the world. And it was a bit, good intention, but a little bit naive. Europe will not allow that to happen. They have their own blockchain service infrastructure. It's called EBSI, so the European Blockchain Service Infrastructure. That's in the process of being launched now. As mentioned, every member country operates a node. Here's where, if I want to do cross-border things and cross-network things, then you need bridges that'll port from one to the other. That's how I see that evolving. Now, do you need standards in order to enable the interoperability? Yes and no, but what I'm really don't want to see is that standards become before innovation. And so let's not slow things down by trying to wait. You need to define standards for that. There are good standards organizations already working on it, like the token taxonomy. I forget what their full name is, but there's token taxonomy that different blockchains are members of, and defining common standards. And I mean, the best one in terms of defining standards, I think today is still with the Ethereum community, and having a good process for setting standards that others can adopt. The leader in a certain domain usually gets to define those standards, so I think it's probably going to evolve in that direction. And these different networks, so there's, China's is like 3 years ahead of Europe. Europe is coming up now with such a network. I think that a lot of regional ones will come up. So those are the two biggest ones that I'm aware of, but there's other parts of the world will have their own thing, and we'll have to figure out how these things are going to interoperate to have seamless cross-border things happening.
Go for it. You were going to say something.
So what I would say, like on standards, when you talk about the metaverse or when you talk about blockchain, right? And then there's two different things associated with it, right? Because when you're looking at Web3 or whether you're looking at the metaverse itself, because I think there's pieces of both sides of it that are not technically within current standards inside the blockchain at the moment. That all these projects that you're seeing, they're not all running straight on the blockchain, right? So I think there's two sides to this. I agreed with everything you said when it came to the Web3 side of things, right? I think there's also this whole other piece of interoperability in the metaverse, right? Which is not just purely on the chain side of things, right? And that's making sure that how users and avatar systems work, and what's the level of ability of this model to go into one metaverse versus another, and is this 2D and 3D, and can I transfer from this metaverse to another metaverse, and how would I transfer this, on the coin side, obviously there's interoperability that would require on being able to exchange in between metaverses, which could be useful. But I think there's all sorts of things that we need to talk to, even communication standards to video standards to being able to, how do we talk to each other?
Yeah. I know you want to say something.
No, but it's an interesting topic. Like we're at early days, and one thing I'm actually always interested in, when we talk about metaverse, it's quite common that people say the metaverse. And it's like, I don't know, do you guys, you're really in the metaverse space, but...
You missed my speech.
Okay,
I actually made that point. Is it a metaverse? Is it the metaverse? Who knows? Because, and nothing's correct at this point.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I have a question regarding the standards, coming back to the standards. You've got the BSN, you've got EPSI, and you're probably going to have a couple more. Can these, hypothetically speaking, can these be weaponized by a consortium of countries in the future? Just kind of like what's happening with SWIFT today.
I think most of these kind of regional networks, they do have like a lot of nodes in them, but they are typically built with permissioned blockchains. So that but they of course they have consensus algorithms. So you have to get a certain number of members of a network in order to collude, in order to censor another member state, for example. I guess the question is more like, is it more probable with such a network, or more probable without such a network, or more probable with a public network? So I think there's different ways you can look at that, and I think whichever method is, of course, a fully decentralized public network probably has the best chance of resisting censorship, and it's kind of a spectrum going in the other direction, from fully public networks to permission networks to current systems that we use today. So that would enable or facilitate censoring, or let's say embargoing certain parties from participating in the network, as the networks are set out to serve them. They can down the road be censored on that spectrum of ease of being able to do so.
Interesting.
Yeah, I just think that we can do everything that we can. I like what you said, like, the number of nodes, and yeah, that's definitely creates vulnerability, right? But I think similarly, I think the operational risk that's out there in what we said in like non-centralized owners of the underlying system, and the ability to update the code base and restrict things like Venezuela, is something that governments will be able to do for a long time, as long as they're controlling the internet. and communication channels. And I know you can set it up to write it on a specific area, but there's areas where they're actually trying to block specific IP addresses, blocks ways that you can even get out into those areas. So it's nice to think that you can do it completely, but there's always going to be ways. And there was one time in finance where I was on a panel with a bunch of the large banks, and everyone basically was talking about security. And this is back in the days of HTTPS and letting traders actually trade over the web. And they were very scared about that, right? And a couple of them said, yeah, we're gonna go do this. And they were using OpenSSL at the time. And I was like, that doesn't sound so smart. And sure enough, 3 weeks later, OpenSSL got cracked. And as much as I'd like to think that everything is completely secure at this point in time, there's always a chance. Never say never. So.
Yeah, the pace of change is fast.
Yep.
Yeah, there's always a balance between. Well, okay, I won't reiterate what you already said, but I agree.
Yeah, on that note, I'd like to open up the floor for any questions you guys might have. Anyone? Come on, no one? No coffee? All right, well, that's it from us. Thank you so much. Pleasure being here. Thank you, guys.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.